And we're back with token economies. Here we go. All right. So let's go ahead and look at these token economies as a whole. These are pretty powerful tools. They're entire systems. Right? So you're going to see these things used a lot in institutional settings, maybe in schools, in hospitals, in group homes, in troubled teen homes, or whatever the case may be. These things are used in, generally speaking, larger environments. You can use them with one person, and maybe you saw some of that in the Nanny 911 stuff, where they're using it with one individual and say, okay, you're earning marbles or something like that, and then you can spend those marbles for something. There's nothing wrong with that, but they're often used in these larger settings. So the angle I'm going to take with this is probably going to be mainly from classroom experience. Tokens are nothing more than conditioned reinforcers. That's all they are. Right? They don't mean anything until you give them a value. That's what a conditioned reinforcer is, right? So the idea with something becoming a token is that you have to be able to save it, right? So I've got my little beads here, okay? So these beads, all right, so if the reinforcer or something can last, these things are lasting, right? I've had these things for like 30 years, for crying out loud, right? So I can save those. And then they're not really tokens anymore because I can't exchange them for anything other than funny looks, maybe when I walk around with beads. But the idea is that you can save them, I can store them, right? And I can exchange them. The moment I can do all that, it's a token, right? And if you do that within a system, it's called a token economy. Money is kind of the classic example of a token, right? You can save it, you can exchange it for goods and services. In other words, reinforcers. You can exchange it for other backup reinforcers, such as other conditioned backup reinforcers. You can exchange it for unconditioned backup reinforcers, food, water, sex, right? You can exchange it for whatever you want, right? For the most part, okay? Except for happiness. Supposedly, money can't buy you happiness. Ha ha ha. Anyway. Lottery tickets, winning versus losing. Are those things tokens? Are they not tokens? In a sense, they are. They're a type of token. They can be exchanged for stuff, but only if you win them. All right, kinda. Right? Some of those programs out there are now available. If you lose enough, you can send in all your losers and potentially get something else. Right, so you can get in another drawing or something like that. So that's one of those things that we got. Gaming tickets. Right? So that like the thing you go to the Wonderland Golf or something like that, and you play your skee ball or your push the coins over the edge game, whatever the heck it is, and you earn all these little tokens. Well, you can those little tickets. Those are functionally tokens because you can then later take the 8 million of those things that you needed to get in order to buy a pencil. And in fact, the last time I went and did those, it wasn't that long ago, just a year ago or so. My wife and I, we went up to the local arcade place, and we were playing away, playing away. I don't know how many thousands of those damn things we had, just tons of them. And we went up there and we dropped them off, and they weighed the whole thing. And like, oh, okay, cool. Well, you can buy a bouncy ball. I'm like, are you shitting me? I just gave it to him. Like I don't want a damn bouncy ball. And the bouncy ball wasn't big enough for my dog to play with, so it wasn't any. The tokens for me had absolutely no value. But that bicycle, hey, that would have been kind of cool, giving that to the neighborhood kid or something like that, right? But it only took like 58,000 tokens in order to get the bike that was on the wall. And I think I would have had to spend like $500 in order to do that. And you can buy the bike for $50. So I'm kind of hinting at some future problems that we're going to run into with tokens here, and that's make sure that you price them in a way that makes sense, right? So you price the items that you can buy with tokens in a proper way. You don't want to have too much inflation and things like that. Anyway, let's keep going. Coffee cards, great examples of tokens, right? You get 10, get a free cup, okay, that type of thing. Okay. The idea with a token economy is that we're going to take these things and we're going to develop an environment around it. Okay. So we're going to artificially, meaning that we're going to be delivering tokens, we're going to reinforce behavior with those tokens, and then later the person's going to then supposedly exchange those things for other backup reinforcers. This can be done completely naturally, by the way, right? And it can be done artificially, as I was just saying. The natural sort of thing is using real dollars, right? You can earn, what do you say, allowance or something like that for doing things. And that's a very natural sort of setting. It can be artificial where you can earn a little ticket in kind of like the gaming centers and arcades and stuff, and you can then exchange those. Okay. It can be temporary. They can be permanent. Money is a permanent token economy. We live in a token economy, right? So if you're in a school or something, you can do this for a couple of months. You can do it for a quarter. You can do it ongoing. I know of some school districts, or some schools in the area that have nonstop token economies. Right? That's just part of their school policy. And that depending on how old you are, it was what or what grade you're in. It determines on what types of tokens you can earn and how many you can earn and how often you can spend them and what you can spend them on and all those things. Right? But they've made it permanent. They just made it part of the educational process in order to manage behavior. It's kind of a newish trend. It's called positive behavior support. Right? That we're going to support the behaviors we want rather than just focusing on getting rid of the behaviors we don't want. Again, as I've said a couple of times, the key is that we have to be able to exchange those tokens for backup reinforcers. And we'll talk more about backup reinforcers as we go. The advantages right off the bat, the reinforcement's immediate. I give you the token right now. I see you doing the right thing, I give you the token. I don't have to wait for a week to give you the feedback or whatever the case may be. I just give you the token. That token will then bridge the gap between the behavior and the backup reinforcer. The backup reinforcer is probably the thing that's really doing the work, so to speak, in the sense that that's the one that's probably most connected to the behavior, but that token bridges that gap, and it reminds the kiddo that I will be able to do something with this. I will earn something with this. I will buy something with this. Right? If you have a token that can buy a whole bunch of things, then essentially it just becomes a generalized condition reinforcer. This is something we've already talked about. Again, that's money, a generalized condition reinforcer. And when you have a generalized condition reinforcer, it does not require a motivating operation because the motivating operations are built in. You can't buy everything all at once. So if you choose to buy X, then you are not buying Z. And when you're not buying Z, you're depriving yourself of it. Therefore, it's probably more reinforcing the next time you do decide to buy Z. When we're doing a token economy, we're going to choose a target behavior right off the bat. Very first thing, what behavior or behaviors, more accurately, do we want to start occurring in the environment? Again, operationalize this, and you're going to be much better off. Right? Set long-term goals. What behaviors do we want for the I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example here from school. How do we want these kids to behave over the course of the year? What do we want them to be able to do at the end of the year? What prerequisites need to happen in order for those long-term goals to be achieved? If so, those better be as part of your token economy, right? Because you're then going to build those behaviors to lead to those long-term behaviors. Right? The more homogeneous the group is, the easier this becomes. Right? If you're trying to build a token economy for, say, an entire school from K through 6 or K through 5, whatever they do now, that's more challenging than just building a token economy for one classroom. Why? Because what reinforces an 11-year-old is probably not going to reinforce a 5-year-old, and I'm sure what reinforces a 5-year-old isn't going to reinforce an 11-year-old, right? So you're going to have to build in systems and point systems and different backup reinforcers and all these things in order to for all these different levels of folks, right? So the more similar those people are, the easier it's going to be to deploy the economy. Of course, we're always going to baseline. Well, we're still behavior analysts. We're going to figure out where the behavior's at today before we implement the token economy, because that's going to allow us to decide if the token economy is successful. Okay? This will, again, so again, you're going to baseline every behavior that's involved, right? Not just the long-term goal behavior, but those prerequisite behaviors as well. All right, how do we choose backup reinforcers? You get as many as you can. Choose a wide variety of those things. Just think of the arcade. They have tons and tons and tons of little goofy little toys available. Why? Because it's effective. Not everybody wants a shiny pencil. Some people want a bouncy ball, right? Some people want one of those little things that you throw on the wall, they stick and they kind of climb down, the sticky spider things, whatever the hell they are. Anyway, who knows what people are going to want? Different strokes for different folks. You can have a lot of options here, and you should have a lot of options here. The primary reason is because you don't have to deliver them all at once. So you're going to have little stockpiles of these things, a little bin full of pencils, a little bin full of bouncy balls, a little bin full of erasers. For whatever reason, when I was a kid, I loved erasers. I don't know why. I don't like them anymore, but I had tons of the pink erasers and, the Pink Panther eraser, and I had blue erasers and purple erasers and art gum erasers. Oh, those are my favorite. And then I found out this weird sort of eraser that it was almost like gum. It was really cool. And you could stretch it and squeeze it and move it and mold it and roll it into a fine point. Man, I just loved erasers, right? So when I would go to the arcade, I would always exchange my stuff for erasers, right? But the idea is you never know what's going to reinforce one person, so you better have a whole bunch of these things on hand. And because you're in a token economy, you can have a whole bunch of things on hand because you can have them just on the shelf, right, or in a drawer, whatever. You do have some ethical issues here. So reinforcers that would normally be available to the kids, you can't withhold them. Okay. The idea is, like it says, meals and TV and things like that. Access to the teacher, access to, recess or something like that. It's a bit unethical to withhold the reinforcers that a child or a person would normally earn in their environment. And that said, you guys are going, oh, wait a minute, you could use TV as a reinforcer. Yeah, I know, we think pre-Mac and all that stuff, but I'm thinking about it in general in a token economy. It's okay to do that on an individual level, but across the board, you want to make sure that the environment doesn't change much. It's more like you're adding something, right? It's like you're adding additional reinforcers available rather than taking away existing ones and having to earn them back. How are you going to dispense these things? Are you going to have purchasing day? Are you going to deliver them at the end of each day? You can deliver them once a week, once a month, once a quarter, whatever it may be. Right? So you've got to establish all those things. What sorts of tokens should you use, right? Ones that aren't easily counterfeited. That's by far the most important. These beads, guess what? I used to counterfeit these little buggers. Okay? We'd go to the store or whatever, and I'd get more. I'd get a little thing of beads, right? And then I could have more tokens. Right? So that's the idea with those things. Is you don't want to do that. Right? In fact, we had a guy in high school. He worked. Some of you might remember this place called Godfather's Pizza, and they would have Godfather's Pizza had a lunch deal. And if they had kind of like the coffee card thing. You buy 10 all-you-can-eat lunches, and then you can get a free one. Well, I had a buddy that worked there, and he would steal entire stacks of those cards, and he would sit there at work and stamp them, and then he would give them out, right? Well, he wouldn't give them; he would sell them, and he made a small fortune selling those things because it was a lot easier to pay him $10 than it was to pay $60 to the store. So he sold these things to everybody in high school, and eventually. The token economy broke down because Godfather's Pizza was like, why are so many of these things being turned in? And I mean, I ate free pizza, relatively free pizza for a year, almost 2 years. I'm not really proud of that, but hey, it worked, right? It was a token economy, and I took advantage of it. And then we counterfeited the tokens. Okay. Can you automate it like the what you call it? Not the sure, the casinos. Casinos do that, right? Like the arcades. Those are automated. You don't have to worry about delivering those things. It just happens automatically. Okay? And it's much easier, that's for sure. Right? I'm trying to think of how you could do that in a classroom. It'd be a bit challenging, but I suppose there's ways you could think of. Probably the hardest thing, at least for me, with regard to token economies is how many of them should you give, right? The idea meaning that do you start out with a lot? Do you start out with a few? What behavior is worth how many tokens? And that's a challenge. And your book's got some general guidelines, and they're good guidelines. You start out with a bunch of tokens right off the bat, and then you finish it out. After a couple of weeks, you fade those out a little bit, and you make it to where they're earning 15 or 20 tokens a day, something like that, right? That way, they're earning enough that they can spend it. Of course, it depends on how much things cost and how often they're turning them in, and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the idea is we do have to worry about how often we're delivering these things and err on the side of caution here and deliver them more than you think you need to. Right? Small token economies, easy to run, not a problem. One teacher can run a token economy for a classroom, but a teacher can't run a token economy for an entire school. If you've got an entire school or an entire institution that's doing token economies, you're going to need help from all sorts of people. Hospitals, institutions, work environments. You're going to need people that are trained just to deliver the tokens, right? And they're part of their job is going to be walking around delivering tokens, right? Where they catch people doing things correctly and they give them the tokens as a result, right? They're going to have to be reinforced for doing that. They're going to have to be, you're going to have to manage them. You're going to have to make sure they're doing the right things. They're going to have to make sure that they're not being bought off like my buddy at Godfather's Pizza, right? We're not wanting to short circuit the program here with assistance, but we don't want to make it too difficult, because the idea with assistance is to make it easier to do. But the moment you're doing a large token economy, all sorts of people are going to have to be involved and trained and managed in order to make it happen. Keep records, all right? Record everything, right? How many tokens are available right now? You don't want to be in the situation where you're printing tokens constantly, right? You don't want to be giving them out non-stop, right? You got to make sure that you've got enough tokens to turn in. You got 50 kids. You're going to give about 20 tokens a day. That's 1,000 tokens. Let's see, 20. 1,000 tokens. So you're going to be giving out a lot of tokens every day. So when you start off with these token economies, you need to make sure you've got enough of them to make it work. Right? Well, that's also going to cost money. Okay. Who's the person giving the tokens? Right? So the reinforcing agent. Again, we talked about that just a moment ago. Right? Quantity and frequency. How many do you give for what? Keep your schedule rich and thin it out. Right? So make them easy to earn early on, and then start to fade them out. Make them harder to earn as you go on, and that makes them more valuable. Right? Managing the backup reinforcers, same type of thing. Make the cost of them inexpensive at first, and then thin them out. How do you thin them out? Well, a couple ways. Number one, give people less opportunity to buy them. Okay, so you go from having a purchase day once a week to having a purchase day once a month. And so you can do that in steps. Or you can make things more expensive. Right? So if the pencil originally cost you 50 tokens, now it's going to cost you 100. So you got to work harder to get the same reinforcer. Punishment. Okay? Punishment is awesome, right? With regard to token economies, because you don't have to hurt anybody. You just walk up, take their tokens. Of course, you have to have a rule for this, okay? All of this stuff has rules. You got to have a manual built and all these things, and to make sure that you're following your procedures and things. But the idea is, hey, inappropriate behavior is going to cost you 20 tokens. Or really seriously inappropriate behavior, I'm going to clean out all the tokens you earned today, all right? Because you did X, whatever X is. Supervision of staff, like I talked about before, you're going to have to watch the people that are involved, and you're going to have to that are involved in delivering the token economy, and you're going to have to reinforce them. You have to give them something for doing this work, right? So maybe it's just a good job once in a while. Maybe that's enough. Maybe it's not. But take them out to dinner or have a special staff day or something. Right? So don't forget to reinforce the folks that are helping with you. You got problems in your delivery, right? You got problems with the token economy, you don't have enough of them. Figure it out right away. As soon as you see the problem, solve it. Right? Otherwise, the thing's going to compound and the token economy is going to crumble. Okay? A lot of this stuff is solved by having a good manual on hand, right? And making sure that you've worked through the manual and that you've addressed any potential problems ahead of time. Stealing tokens, distractions, not spending the tokens, that's an interesting one. What happens if you don't spend them? Because you get some kids, they just hoard these things. It's kind of cute in one sense, but in another sense, it's not really what you want. You want them to be able to spend the tokens. Sometimes you have to figure out how you're going to deal with that if you get a kid that's hoarding them and they're just saving them nonstop. And it's like, well, on one hand, you say, you know what, that's okay, because as long as the appropriate behavior is being reinforced, maybe saving them is actually the backup reinforcer, and having this big stack of tokens is what's cool. Right? When you develop that manual, you're going to be using rules across the board. Rules for the client, rules for the managers, and you're going to have a manual for each group. Here's what the client, you tell the clients what you're going to, here's what you're going to earn. Here's, here's the types of tokens you're going to earn. Here's the behaviors that are going to get you tokens, right? And define those behaviors. And here's how many tokens you're going to get for those behaviors. Here's how often I'm going to give you tokens. Here's how often you're going to be able to spend them. Here's the cost of the items that you're going to be buying with the tokens. And then over time, we're going to make those items more expensive. You're just establishing a set of rules, right? Same thing for the managers, all the same stuff, okay? But you're talking about how to deliver them. Do you make a big deal about it when you deliver a token, or do you just slip the kid a token when they do the appropriate behavior? Okay? This should all be written out. It should be well detailed, and it should be available to everyone. And you should have meetings ahead of time before you implement the token economy to make sure everybody understands what's going on and that you solve any of those potential problems ahead of time. You also need to program for generalization. How are you going to make this happen? All right. Again, this is what I was talking about earlier with thinning stuff out. Right? So we want to thin at the end of the token economy, the tokens should almost be worthless. Okay, in a sense, right? It shouldn't be the tokens that are maintaining the behavior at that point. It should be the social reinforcement that's available for engaging in the appropriate behavior. Reinforcement from the teacher, reinforcement from the other kids, reinforcement from the hospital staff or the institutional staff. Just accessing life in a different way, right? Coming into contact with those natural reinforcers. Ultimately, that's what you're trying to do here. So you can tie tokens to those social reinforcers. You can say, all right, if you earn X numbers of tokens for behavior Z, then we're going to get to have a pizza party, something like that. Right? The idea is you're tying all those things together. Okay? Fade out the procedure. Make it go away, and do it slowly. If you do it too quick, it'll crash on you. Okay? So I tend to start, when I've done token economies, I tend to start small, right, and just slowly fade things out. Decreasing the value of the tokens, either in terms of how many they earn for the particular behavior. Maybe they have to do the behavior 3 or 4 times before they earn a token for it now, or maybe you have to spend more tokens in order to get the same toys or whatever the backup reinforcers are. Those types of things. Another cool little thing is allow the client to adjust the plan for themselves. So if you're working with a small group of kids or one kid, allow them, as time goes on, to pick what they're going to get reinforced for. Right? Have them define the behavior, have them define the backup reinforcers, have them define the tokens. And after you've already gone through a token economy, you'll find out that they kind of know what they're doing and that they'll actually be pretty serious. It's pretty cool to see. Right? We did this with a kid here a while back. We had him on a marble plan. Right? He had to do different things around the house and be nice to his sister and be nice to the kitty cat and all these things, and he would earn marbles for it. And then over time, what we did is we started to fade it out. But then we said, all right, maybe what do you want to do, all right, in order to earn marbles? And his answer was, this is just so cute because he was 6 years old. He says, I want to help my neighbor with the yard. So he actually wanted to help the neighbor pick up their yard, like pick up pine needles and stuff like that. So we said, that's a great behavior to do. How many tokens do you think you should earn for working with the neighbor today? And he chose this crazy small number, and he says, because it would be really nice to have to work with the neighbor a lot. It was just so cute to hear this kid doing that. And he was saying that I should help the neighbor 4 or 5 times before I get anything for it. So we did what he said. We implemented the behavior, and bingo, automatic. It worked great. And then it was interesting. The neighbor kicked in. The neighbor was having fun. The neighbor got help. The neighbor treated the kid nice, and he made a new friend, if you will, right? So it was an older friend, but he made a friend. And then another neighbor saw this whole thing happen, so he got to meet a new neighbor, and then he got to meet more people, and he got to help out people. And he went from being fairly naughty and kind of a little terror in the neighborhood to being this kid that literally went around and helped pull weeds and help the neighbors do whatever on Saturdays and Sundays. And he just had fun interacting with people and getting the positive feedback that he was missing completely. And it all started with a bunch of little marbles. Right? So ultimately, we were able to get rid of the marbles altogether, and he would just do these types of things to help people. Now, of course, hopefully that continues, and people thank him for doing a good job and all that stuff. But ultimately, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get this behavior to be from this artificial environment, or managed by an artificial environment, to something managed by a natural environment. I think that's it for token economies.